Okay, how was Halloween actually used? When when the people started this idea, what were they really focusing on? What were they really talking about? What were they really doing? Well, it was all about nature. Okay, what they were doing was they recognized the different patterns, the different behaviors in nature. Okay, um, like summer, winter, spring, fall, and they recognize the different behaviors or the different things that were going on at these different stages in time. Okay, so they prepared for these things. Okay, so they knew, right? It's just like um, when people um, plant plant food, farmers, you know. Um, Farmers know, right, the best time to plant certain foods. And that's information comes to them by their knowledge of nature, you know. And when I say nature, I'm talking about this is also including the sun, the moon, right, the stars, you know, the weather, you know, the climate, you know. So they knew, you know, certain phases of the moon, you plant certain crops, and you know, and they knew um, certain times of the year is when you harvest. You know, certain times of the year, you know, you plant. You know, so you know, and they call them seasons. You know, now this is a natural thing, and this was practiced uh, uh, with all people on the planet. You know, everyone. I mean, people, right? People have to eat, right? There's no difference between people in the general sense all over the planet. So the sun, the seasons occur all over the planet. So everyone celebrated this. If you want to live, then you practice this thing. You know, so this wasn't, these things were not no mystical, magical, ooh, spooky thing. What happened was, you know, and I think this was largely due to political causes. You know, not so much because people just didn't know. I mean, how are you not going to know? Hey, plant food. You know, I have to eat, and you plant, you look. Say, hey, these trees, these fruits and vegetables, they tend to grow at these times, and and when I do certain things to them, they come out better. Some come out worse. So people, they study nature, you know. But what happens, and like I said, I think it's politically done. They down through time, these things got twisted, and we start looking at ghosts and goblins and jack o' lanterns and all that kind of nonsense. But in reality, the truth, all these things were practices of nature. You know, um, I gotta figure out how do I pronounce this word again?
Samhain.
Samhain. Okay, so the Celtics or the Europeans, okay, you know, they practice this on behavior of following nature, you know, and Sanhagen,
Samhain.
Samhain. I keep saying Samhain, right, is what we call today in the Americas, Halloween. Okay, but it was really just a recognizing of nature, and they followed nature, and they, you know, whatever time of the year they plant their crops, they harvest, and everyone had a chart, a time chart. Everyone had, like, they knew, you know, even if they didn't have a physical one like you have here on the screen, they knew, they practiced it. They had a, say, they just knew, okay, it's that time of the year, and some people, they just, by observing, they just knew what time it was. Okay, it's time to plant some corn or this and that. They from experience. They just knew that like that. And if you understand this, if you understand what I'm saying, that in nature has different patterns, okay, and they go in cycles and they repeat themselves. If you understand that, then you should also realize that we are part of this system. Okay? So, like they say, as above, so below. As within, as without. Okay? So, as nature behaves, so do we behave. So, we have cycles within ourselves that are consistent. Okay? Certain basic things. Okay? So I'm saying this to say that there are many things that we have recognized and practiced down the time. Like, again, astrology. Astrology is the science of the psyche. Okay? So people recognize the different natures in people and how they congrued, how they work together with different aspects of nature. Okay? And people began to practice these things. Okay? So it's the same thing here. Okay? So that's what they did. The Celtics, I was going to say the Celtics, right? They, practice and they recognize different aspects in nature. The four seasons, as we call it, and they just practice these things. Okay, so this is the true meaning behind what we're calling today Halloween. Okay, so let me go. Okay, and again, as always, this is our true history, language, and culture.